I wish Michael was here today. And I wish our children and I could see him tonight, but we can't. He's serving on the other side of the world, where conflict is the norm, where terrorists hide among the innocent, where Iran's terrorist proxies are now attacking American troops.
This is my video update on this Wednesday midday, February the 21st. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with the meeting between the Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and the Russian President Vladimir Putin. And remember the New York Times article a while back with the title, Crossing the Dnipro, What a Ukrainian Military Operation Might Mean. Ukrainian troops have taken positions on the east bank of the Dnipro, posing a threat to Russia's dominance of the region. Here is a look at the battlefield and the strategic implications. So what they're talking about here is Krynki. That's what they're talking about, the New York Times, and how the Ukraine military had created a bridgehead across the Dnipro, and they were going to use this bridgehead to push further south, splitting the Russian forces and making their way to the Sea of Azov. This was all part of the super-duper spring-summer counteroffensive, or actually, the Krynki bridgehead was some of the remnants of the failed super-duper spring-summer counteroffensive. So the summer counteroffensive, it failed. It was defeated by the Russian military, but they still had hope because they had created this bridgehead across the Dnipro. So this was like the last flicker of hope for the Ukraine military to push south and cut off the Russian forces and get to the Sea of Azov. And the New York Times was reporting this. This was going to be the Ukraine military's last chance to complete the goals of the defeated spring-summer super-duper counter-offensive. And anyway, what am I getting to here? Well, Shoigu, he told Putin at this meeting that the Russian military, they have annihilated all of the forces that had set up this bridgehead in Krynki. This bridgehead in Krynki has been defeated. That's what Shoigu told Putin. Actually, let me read you some of what Shoigu told the Russian president. One second here. I know I have this tweet bookmarked somewhere, so bear with me. Baron of Tega, Russian MOD, communicated to the president that the Ukrainian bridgehead in Krynki has been completely erased. Yes, and from Dagny Taggart, AFU tried to show the USA the result of Krynki, but lost 1,820 people, according to Shoigu. Krynki has been captured. Shoigu confirmed at a meeting with Putin. 1,820 people lost because Zelensky wanted to show off to the United States that the super-duper counteroffensive had not been defeated, was still going on. So they set up this bridgehead. They lost 1,820 Ukrainian soldiers' lives so that they can peddle the fiction that the counteroffensive was still ongoing, and so that Zelensky could still get money and military weapons. money. So you can still get money. That's what 1,820 people lost their lives for in Krynki. Anyway, Shoigu also talked about the Russian defenses during the super duper counteroffensive. And Shoigu said that the Russian military, they had intel beforehand, before the super duper counteroffensive was launched. And he told Putin that Russia knew at which direction, which area the super duper counteroffensive was going to take place. They weren't exactly sure as to which towns and villages everything would happen, but they knew it was going to be in the south. They knew it was going to be in the Zaporozhye, Kherson area. And so Shoigu, he told Putin that the Russians, the Russian military decided to just create these layered defenses throughout the entire south. Kherson, Zaporozhye, all of that area, they just decided to create these layered defenses. They weren't exactly sure what area Ukraine was going to strike at first, but they said, we're just going to build these defenses throughout the south. And that's what Russian intel, that's what they had with regards to the counteroffensive. And that's what Shoigu was telling Putin. We had the intel somewhere in the south. We weren't sure exactly where. I had the intel as well, by the way, and so did you. Pretty much the whole world had the intel as far as the super duper counteroffensive was concerned, because for 6 months before the super duper counteroffensive actually kicked off, Zelensky and Stoltenberg and Kirby and Borrell and everyone was just running their mouths about how they are going to launch a counteroffensive in the south to split up the Russian forces and reach the Sea of Azov. So Shoigu had the intel, but we all had the intel because that's all they were talking about for 6 months before they actually started the counteroffensive. Anyway, it was an interesting statement from Shoigu. And let me read you a tweet from MD, the account MD, which gets into some detail as to what Shoigu said about Avdiivka, the operation in Avdiivka, to Putin. The operation to liberate Avdiivka will be included in the textbooks of the Ministry of Defense, Shoigu said at a meeting with Putin. The Minister of Defense noted that the General Staff managed to carry out the operation to capture the city with minimal losses. Putin in turn noted that the command of the Ukrainian armed forces gave the order to withdraw from Avdiivka already when Ukrainian troops were fleeing from there. I talked about this in a video. Alexander has talked about the route, the retreat, but what was really a route in Avdiivka, and how the Ukraine military was that was in Avdiivka, they started to retreat on foot, and then a day later, Syrskyi comes out and gives the order to retreat. So that's what Putin is talking about. The military, the Ukraine military in Avdiivka, they realized that they were getting routed. They realized that the Zelensky regime had pretty much abandoned them, and they started to get out whichever way they could. And then a day later, Syrskyi comes out and says, okay, we can retreat now from Avdiivka. A complete debacle. What else did Shoigu say? Offensive actions after the liberation of the city continue to the west. 72 square kilometers have been liberated. The Russian armed forces created unbearable conditions for the armed forces of Ukraine and Avdiivka. They were forced to flee. Our troops carried out 460 strikes per day on the concreted Avdiivka. That's 200 tons of ammunition. The coke chemical plant in Avdiivka has been liberated. Russian troops are moving to the west, and the enemy left many wounded in Avdiivka. Many weapons were abandoned. I've heard that the Russian military, they've captured something like anywhere between 800 to like 1,500 Ukraine military Ukraine military have been captured or have surrendered. Those are the numbers, between 800 and like 1,500 or 1,600. But the coke chemical plant in Avdiivka has been liberated. Podolyak, not the coke plant, anything but the coke plant. I imagine Zelensky's very, very depressed. Very depressed. He's lost the coke plant. But Mr. President, it's not that kind of coke plant. I don't care, Podolyak. We lost the coke plant. I'm very depressed. So that is what Shoigu told Putin about Krynki, about the intel for the spring-summer offensive, about the Avdiivka operations, and Putin also he talked about the Russian nukes in space, the shovels and the washing machines, the dishwashers that they have in space that are nuclear equipped to shoot down Netflix and Google Maps satellites or whatever they're going to shoot down in space. Anyway, Putin's like, this is nonsense. He's like, Russia has never advocated for nuclear weapons in space, and we don't have nuclear weapons in space. And let's stop with this nonsense. That's pretty much what Putin said at this meeting. We also had yesterday, coming out of Russia, that the news that Lindsey Graham, our favorite senator from South Carolina, he has been placed on a Russian wanted list and a terrorist and extremist list. I believe he has been placed on two lists, a terrorist extremist list and a wanted list. Interesting news. They don't get into the details when they made this announcement of Lindsey Graham being placed on these lists. They don't really get into the details as to what specifically Lindsey Graham did or said to be placed on these lists, but he is on these lists. This is official, coming from the Russian government. So I guess Lindsey Graham is not going to be in Trump's cabinet. I imagine he's not going to be, if he's trying to get a position as defense secretary or secretary of state, because Lindsey Graham has been kissing Trump's butt a whole lot lately. And if he's trying to get into Trump's cabinet to get some sort of position as NSA director or secretary of state or defense secretary or something like that, well, this designation on Russia's wanted and terrorist list is not going to help out Lindsey Graham. Anyway, that was interesting news coming out of Russia. Lindsey Graham, he runs his mouth a whole lot, and he's going to brush this off. He's going to be like, oh, this is like a badge of honor and blah blah blah, stuff like that. But this is serious stuff. I mean, no one wants to be on Russia's wanted or terrorist list. That's not something that you actually strive for as a U.S. lawmaker, as a lawmaker of any country. You don't want to be on this list. But I'm sure Lindsey Graham, he'll spin this as some sort of badge of honor. You see, I'm a tough guy. I stand up to the Putin, and this terrorist list or this extremist list doesn't scare me. I will continue to stand up to the Putin. That's what Lindsey Graham is going to say. Anyway, Biden put out a new video, and in this video, which is highly edited, a lot of jump cuts. I mean, they really, really sliced and diced and cut up this video for where Biden is talking about getting money to Ukraine, getting the $61 billion to Ukraine. And in this video, he talks about Navalny. Navalny is the reason why Congress now has to approve $61 billion to Ukraine, because they have to defeat the Putin. The United States must defeat the Putin. Biden is obsessed with Putin. Absolutely freaking obsessed with the Putin. I mean, he's more obsessed with Putin than he is with Trump. Way more obsessed with Putin than he is with Trump. But he brings up Trump in this video as well. Trump's NATO statement, and he says that, what did he say? Something like Trump doesn't doesn't respect our allies or won't protect our allies and just stuff like that. Anyway, Navalny, the death of Navalny is the real launch pad, the real reason for this video from President Joe Bidenopoulos. And yeah, very edited, because I imagine that Biden can't string together a 5-second sentence. I imagine that it's like, okay, Biden, like, say these 3 words, stop. Now say these 3 words, stop. And now say these 2 words. And I'm sure they had to like then, just join all of those clips together in post-production and come out with this final edited video. But I'm telling you, a lot of editing in that video. Got to get money to Ukraine because of Navalny. That's the argument that Biden makes in this video. So because Navalny died in prison, and Biden says Navalny died in prison, he says Navalny died in prison, Putin did it. He's like, Navalny died in prison, but we know that Putin did it. He's like, he says that something like Trump doesn't want to say that Putin killed Navalny, like he refuses to say Putin killed Navalny or something like that. He's like, just say it. Just say that Putin killed Navalny. Defeat the Putin. Have to defeat the Putin. So get some $61 billion more dollars to the Zelensky regime, well, to the military-industrial complex, minus 10% for the big guy, and then the military-industrial complex, they'll sign all the contracts that they need to sign, and then they'll start to get the weapons to Project Ukraine. Biden also announced that there's going to be more sanctions on Russia because of Navalny. More sanctions. I don't know what sanctions are going to place. He said very, very tough sanctions. He said there's going to be tough sanctions on Navalny because of Navalny, and there's going to be tough sanctions put in place to commemorate the 2-year anniversary of the conflict. So it's all being timed, just perfectly, right? To get the maximum media punch to it, 2-year anniversary, Project Ukraine, and the death of Navalny. So they're going to place a whole lot of sanctions on Russia. The timing of all of this, very, very convenient for the Biden White House, isn't it? But The Hill, they put out an article, a report, where they claim that there are lawmakers in the House right now who are putting together an alternative to the $61 billion for Ukraine funding, and in this alternative, they are proposing $47 billion to Ukraine, $10 billion to Israel, $5 billion to Taiwan. I believe I have my numbers right. Yeah, I think I do. And some money for the southern border, like a couple of dollars for the southern border, but they are going to include the southern border. It's not going to be much. It'll be a couple of bucks, but it will be included. And this is the revised Project Ukraine package that they're putting together in order to win over Speaker Johnson and to win over the America First Republicans that are against the $61 billion package for Project Ukraine. So $47 billion to Ukraine, from 61 to 47 billion. I believe it was 15 billion to Israel. Now it's 10 billion. I believe it was 10 billion to Taiwan, Asia Pacific, and now it's going to be 5 billion. And where the Senate removed anything connected to the southern border, this new package is going to include some stuff for the southern border. And they're hoping that this will get passed quickly, because these lawmakers are saying if this doesn't get passed quickly, then Ukraine is going to be in big, big trouble. And Nancy Pelosi, I believe she was on MSNBC, and she went cuckoo for Cocoa Pops. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, not Cocoa Pops, Cocoa Puffs. Yeah, she went lost her mind as she was speaking to Jen Psaki of MSNBC. She has her own show on MSNBC. Isn't that interesting how it works out? You're the communications director or spokesperson for the Biden White House and Obama. She was actually in the Obama administration as well. And you get rewarded with your own show on MSNBC. Anyway, Pelosi, she started to go crazy about Trump and Putin and how Putin has some blackmail on Trump. And Putin is he's one of the top 3 or 4 richest people in the world. And it was just bizarre, absolutely bizarre. Let's see here from modernity.news. Let me read you some of what Pelosi said. Appearing on MSNBC with Democrat mouthpiece Jen Psaki, the pair claimed Trump is a fanboy of Putin, and that he encourages Putin to invade NATO countries. Quote, Putin is among the top 3 or 4 evil people of the world. Pelosi ranted before stating, what does he have on Donald Trump that he has to be constantly catering to Putin? I said one of the top 3 or 4 richest people, one of the top 3 or 4 most evil people of the world. This is Nancy Pelosi claiming that Putin is one of the top 3 or 4 evil people of the world. This is Nancy Pelosi making this claim, projecting. Maybe she's projecting. Maybe, just a little bit. Just a little bit of projection from Nancy Pelosi. Anyway, she went on to claim that Trump, whose name she struggled to remember, has brought disgrace to the White House and didn't consider it an honor to serve as president or take seriously the oath to defend the Constitution. Quote, he is a person without values. This is Nancy Pelosi now. This is Nancy Pelosi speaking. Trump is a person without values. Pelosi further whined, adding, he looks like he's going to be a person without dollars either, gloating about the clearly political indictments against Trump. Quote, I don't know what Putin has on him, but it's probably financial or something on the come, something he expects to get, Pelosi hissed. She also claimed that Trump is telling Putin to go into these countries, NATO countries, without saying what country she was referring to, adding that NATO is there to stop Russia, to keep Russia out. That is right, to keep Russia out. Keep Russia out, keep Germany down, keep the U.S. in. So yeah, that was Pelosi's unhinged, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, crazy rant to Jen Psaki. Yeah, Putin has the goods on Trump. One of the top 3, 4 evil people in the world. That's Putin. One of the top 3 or 4. I don't know. Maybe he's top 4, maybe top 3. I'm not quite sure yet. Who else was on that list, Pelosi? Who else was on that top 3 or 4 list of evil people in the world? I'm sure Trump was on there. He must have been on there, right? Who else was on that list? Oh boy. I don't know what Putin has on him. She doesn't know what Putin has on him, but she's certain that Putin has something on him. She has something on Trump. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure he has something on him. Oh my God. This whole Trump-Russia thing, how old is this thing now? 6 years? 7 years? They are never going to let this thing go, this Trump-Putin Russiagate thing. I mean, they are never, ever going to let this thing go. No matter how many investigations and Mueller testimonies, and I mean, they're never, ever going to let this thing go. Never, ever, 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 never, ever, 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 Miss Jackson. Sorry, Miss Jackson. Oh my God. Trump and Putin, I mean, they have broken the neocons and the neolibs' brains. They really have broken their brains. I don't understand why, but I mean, they really have broken their brains. Anyway, let's go to Poland. Let's go to Poland and talk about the farmers in Poland who have blocked the border with Ukraine. So the farmers in Poland, they have been blocking the border, on again, off again, blocking the border since October. And this started out because the Ukraine farmers, they were given, or they weren't required to have permits in order to get their products into the European Union, and this made their products much cheaper. They were already cheaper because of the of allegedly because of whatever chemicals they use and stuff like that. But basically, they weren't required to have permits to dump their products into the European Union, specifically into Poland, and this is hurting the Polish farmers. It's undercutting their prices. And so this started in October. They were blocking the border between Poland and Ukraine. And then the Polish government, I believe, was this Law and Justice or was this Donald Tusk? I believe this was Law and Justice at the time. They told the farmers, what did they tell the farmers? I think they said that they pledged to reinstate the permit system, right? So the Polish government at the time, they pledged to the farmers, the Polish farmers, that they're going to reinstate the permit system for Ukrainian truckers and introduce subsidies for Polish corn. All right, so it was the truckers that didn't need the permit in order to dump the Ukraine agriculture into Poland. So then the government says, okay, don't worry, farmers, we're going to reinstate the permit system. So then the blockade ended for a bit, but it has started up again this month because, and I reported on this actually, because the European Commission proposed extending the suspension of custom duties on agricultural goods from Ukraine and Moldova all the way through to 2025. So the EC, Ursula von der Crazy, she came in and said, yeah, well, we're going to extend the privileges that Ukraine agriculture has. We're not going to place any custom duties or anything like that on agriculture coming from Ukraine and Moldova. So once again, they're going to be able to undercut the prices of Polish farmers. And so the Polish farmers, they have now blocked the border, all the roads on the border between Poland and Ukraine. And yesterday they even poured Ukrainian grain on the highway as well to kind of make their point. And actually there was a sign. Get this, they even had a sign, the Polish farmers. Let me find this sign here. They had a sign on one of the trucks or one of the tractors which said, Putin, straighten out Ukraine and Brussels and our government. No joke, man. No joke. That was the sign. It's in Polish, but yeah. Putin, straighten out Ukraine and Brussels and our government. Please, Putin, help us. That's basically what the Polish farmers are saying. That is going to drive the European Union absolutely crazy, man. Donald Tusk is probably going crazy if he heard about this sign that was at these protests. Man, oh man, oh boy. But what was I going to say? But yeah, the Ukraine side of things, they're complaining that this blockade of the roads is blocking weapons deliveries from Poland into Ukraine. They don't seem concerned about the agriculture. I don't know. Maybe they are concerned about the agriculture entering the EU markets. But all of the Ukraine lawmakers and activists, they're getting on social media saying, what are you guys doing, Poland? You're blocking all of the weapons that the collective West is delivering to us through Poland from getting into Ukraine. Isn't that interesting, huh? All of these weapons are flowing into Ukraine via Poland in order to fight a war with Russia. But of course, the collective West, they're not a party to this war. Not a party to this war at all. They have nothing to do with this war, but the complaint from Ukraine is all of these weapons that are moving from the collective West via Poland into Ukraine so we can continue to fight this war, so our soldiers can continue to be annihilated by the Russian military. Well, they're being blocked by the farmers. And that's their big complaint. That is the big complaint, that the Polish farmers, the protesters, are preventing the weapons from entering Ukraine. So sad. So very, very sad. And then Stoltenberg, he's going to come out with a statement saying, no, we're not a party to this war at all. We have nothing to do with this war, except funneling massive amounts of weapons via Poland into Ukraine so that we can keep the war going. Anyway, let's talk about another war, and that is the war in Gaza. And there was another UN vote for a Gaza ceasefire. This was a resolution to the Security Council from Algeria. And the United States, they blocked this proposal for a ceasefire from Algeria. We knew this was going to happen, actually. I even mentioned this in my video yesterday. This should come as no surprise. The U.S. even said that they're going to block any resolution for a ceasefire, a resolution that doesn't come from the United States. Every other resolution, basically the U.S. is going to block. And the U.S. was the only country that blocked this resolution. The U.K. abstained from this resolution via Algeria. And the reason that the U.S. gives for voting down this resolution is they say that this resolution from Algeria is going to somehow derail a U.S. resolution and a U.S. brokered peace. The U.S. is trying to broker a peace in this conflict, or try to broker a resolution between Israel and Hamas. And they claim that this resolution from Algeria, which is demanding a pause in the hostilities, and it's also demanding that it's also trying to prevent Israel from operations into Rafah. The U.S. ambassador to the UN is saying that this resolution is just going to sabotage the work that we're doing as the United States to create the conditions for a temporary ceasefire and stuff like that. I don't understand how this resolution prevents the U.S. resolution that they're working on, or where this U.S. resolution is. We've been hearing about it for a while now, but I don't know where this resolution is. But that's what they claim. That's what the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations is saying. Can't have the Algeria resolution for a ceasefire derail our up-and-coming resolution that we're working on. Anyway, that's what happened in the UN. This was no surprise. We knew this was going to happen, but it happened. So Tucker Carlson gave an interview to Glenn Beck. I believe that was Glenn Beck, wasn't it, of The Blaze? And in this interview, it was via video, Tucker said some very interesting things. The first interesting thing that Tucker said, or one of the interesting things that caught my attention that Tucker said, was that the New York Times had actually contacted him before his trip to Moscow, his recent trip to interview Vladimir Putin. And Tucker told Glenn Beck that the New York Times, they contacted him and they basically asked him, what are you up to? Why are you going to Moscow? And Tucker was like, I didn't tell anybody outside of my production team. I didn't tell anybody about the trip to Moscow or why I was going to go, the purpose of the trip. And he's like, the New York Times, they knew that I was going to go to Moscow to interview Vladimir Putin. And according to Tucker, this means that, or this is an indication that his messages were once again being monitored by U.S. intel, and they were being leaked to the New York Times. And they got the New York Times then to contact Tucker and to poke around and see what he was up to. A very interesting statement from Tucker Carlson. So where I am right now is is the Likio in Athens, walking in the footsteps of Aristotle. Yeah, walking in the footsteps of Aristotle. I don't know if you guys can read that. So we'll do a walk around and we'll end the video. It's not a big site. It's a small site, but it's nice. So that was one interesting statement that Tucker Carlson made. And the other interesting statement that Tucker Carlson made, which is kind of, I guess, a pre-clown world, I guess you could say, is Tucker said that Boris Johnson, he offered to interview Boris Johnson because he was like, look, Boris Johnson, he's going down in history as the guy that sabotaged the peace deal in March of 2022 that went to Kiev and scuttled what would have been a ceasefire in the conflict in Ukraine and would have saved hundreds of thousands of lives. And Tucker's like, so I offered to interview Boris Johnson and get his side of the story. This is what Tucker said. Boris Johnson calls me a tool of the Kremlin or something, so I put in a request for an interview with Boris Johnson. Finally, one of his advisors gets back to me and says he will talk to you, but it's going to cost you $1 million. $1 million. That's what Boris Johnson, one of Boris Johnson's aides, told Tucker. Yeah, Boris Johnson will speak to you, but it's going to cost you $1 million. $1 million to speak to Boris the clown. And Tucker told Glenn Beck, Putin didn't demand $1 million, so you're telling me this guy is a lot sleazier than Vladimir Putin? I could answer that question. Boris Johnson is magnitudes sleazier than Tucker Carlson, than Putin and Tucker Carlson. That's the answer to your question. Is Boris Johnson sleazier than Vladimir Putin? Oh God, yes. God, yes. Oh man, it's not even close. It is not even freaking close. I don't know. We should ask Pelosi. Is Boris Johnson one of the top 3 or 4 evil people in the world? Nancy Pelosi. Did Boris Johnson make the list? He should. Anyway, I thought that was an interesting statement from Tucker Carlson. Very interesting statement. Probably the most interesting statement that he made during this interview. Boris Johnson wants $1 million. It really shows you where their mind is at, huh? It's all about the money, man. It is all about the money. I wonder how much money was offered to Boris to go to Kiev and sabotage the ceasefire. I don't know. Just saying. Just saying. Now that we kind of have a price list for Boris Johnson's services. So now we know if you want to interview Boris Johnson, it costs you $1 million. Money well spent, huh, to interview Boris Johnson. Money not well spent. Anyway, let's do a cloud world and we will wrap this video up. So let's see, we have a bunch of cloud worlds today. Here's a tweet from Simplicius the Thinker. The propaganda is hilarious. The takeaway, pay attention and don't scroll on your phone in a war zone trench while rockets are falling nearby. And he has a paragraph here, a screenshot from a paragraph. I think this is from a Politico article when they were covering what was going on at the Munich Security Conference. I think this is from Politico. Could be wrong, but it says Munich. 4 American senators recounted a story Ukrainian officials told them at the Munich Security Conference. A soldier in a muddy trench with Russian artillery exploding nearby, scrolling on his phone for signs the U.S. House would approve military aid. That is just ridiculous, man. So they want us to believe, the collective West media wants us to believe. Boy, it's just crazy stuff, man. The script writers are they're just out of control. They are out of control. They want us to believe that there were soldiers in trenches, Russian artillery, horrific conditions, horrific, a nightmare, a horror, in a trench with Russian artillery pouring down. And they were scrolling on their phones for signs that the U.S. would approve military aid. Boy, do they want this military aid really, really bad. This has got to be, this $61 billion, this has got to be the last money that they're going to be able to get because they want this so bad. This has got to be their last payday. This and the Russian frozen assets. I think they realize if we can get this $300 billion and this $61 billion, then we can call it quits. So that's why they're pushing so hard for this money. Anyway, incredible script writing there. We also have the news that Twitter X briefly suspended the account of Yulia Navalny, and everyone freaked out. I mean, everyone, all of the neocons and all of the neo-libs, I mean, they really, really, just give you a view here, they really freaked out. And it was just a brief suspension. I think she now has her account. But boy, did they go crazy. I mean, they really went crazy over the fact that Yulia Navalny's Twitter account was suspended. Yeah. Can't have her Twitter account suspended because she's going to be the opposition in exile. A lot of money invested in the narrative of the opposition to Putin and Navalny, huh? Can't have that investment go bust. And let's do one more clown world, and we will wrap this video up. And Nikki Haley speaking, I believe in South Carolina before the vote takes place. I believe Saturday, and Nikki Haley's behind by I think something by 20 points or something like that to Trump. But she started to cry. And she was crying because her husband is in the military, and he's deployed. I don't know where. He's deployed in the Middle East, I think she said. And she started speaking about her husband, and she said she broke down in tears. Talking about her husband and his military service and how he's far away from her. I mean, understandable. I'm not going to say that, if you're married and you love your husband or your wife and they're far away from you, then, yeah, it's got to be tough. It's got to be upsetting. But if you're running for president of the United States, it's not a good look. It's not a good look to be crying. So that was a big mess up. Once again, Nikki Haley, she has got the worst media and social media team perhaps in history. I mean, they are really, really bad. Whoever told her it's okay to cry or it's okay to show your emotions when you're speaking to the American people, that was a big mess up. My opinion is that this was a big mess up. All right, that's the video, everybody. theduran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and Twitter X. And go to the Duran shop, 15% off all t-shirts. Take care.